It turns out that William Lane Craig is not the only Christian who believes that God exists on the basis of his feelings. This seems to be an unfortunately common phenomenon. Here's a video I found called My Evidence for an Unprovable God that makes what is essentially an appeal to emotion.
So there's an interesting story about two evangelists, Billy Graham and Charles Templeton. Both men were gifted speakers and drew crowds in the thousands to their meetings. In fact, Charles Templeton had 91,000 people come out to hear him speak. But in 1948, both men were faced with different philosophical criticisms regarding the Bible, and Billy Graham responded after much prayer and said, "I don't know how to answer all the questions that the critics are asking me, but I'm going to choose to allow faith to go beyond my doubts, and I'm simply going to believe."
So when Billy Graham encountered some of the shit in the Bible that doesn't make any sense, he just put his fingers in his ears, his head in the sand, and kept on believing in something he knew was nonsensical.
Templeton, faced with these same questions, enrolled at Princeton Theological Seminary and less than a decade later declared himself an agnostic. In 1996, he wrote his memoir called Farewell to God, My Reasons for Rejecting the Christian Faith.
So Billy Graham ignored the shit that didn't seem to make sense, while the other guy researched it, did his best to make sense of it, and concluded that things just didn't add up, and so stopped believing in it. Which of these two approaches seems more reasonable? I really don't understand how any rational person could look at these two examples and think, yeah, what Billy Graham did makes a whole lot more sense than what that Templeton guy did. To hell with thinking and research. I must confess that I feel a little creeped out by people who believe that Billy Graham's approach is the better or more virtuous one. This guy makes it sound as though Billy Graham didn't even make an effort to examine the Bible or other scriptures for answers to the questions to which he couldn't respond.
Later in his 80s, in an interview about Jesus, Templeton responded and said he was the greatest human being who ever lived. As his voice began to shake and tears filled his eyes, he said, "I miss him."
What a shame that facts and rationality got in the way of Templeton's comforting beliefs. Clearly, he should have continued to believe what made him feel good, regardless of how irrational he knew it to be, am I right? Listen, if you feel compelled to believe shit that you acknowledge doesn't make sense to you because it makes you feel good, that's your business. But don't glower with pity at those of us who actually need ideas to make sense to us and to be consistent with the facts before we can believe in those ideas.
I mean, we feel foolish. How can I give an answer for faith in a God who is invisible from my sight? But yet when you look at the complexity and the beauty of life, it seems that there's nothing but fingerprints of design in every aspect of the world that we live in.
Yes, the world is very splendid, but it also has in it insects whose whole life cycle is to burrow into the eyes of children and make them blind. They eat outwards from the eyes. Why?